Hey, how's it going, man? I love that you're playing my alma mater
Yeah,
song
on Wisconsin.
on Wisconsin, straight to the Sweet 16, 4 years in a row. It's getting like clockwork, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
Feeling pretty good about your bracket?
Uh, yeah, I'm all right. I still have all my Final Four teams, so that's kind of what I always bump down once I start losing. Louisville just losing was kind of a hit, but I've got my champ still in it and all my um Final Four teams still there. So we'll see how tonight goes. I wouldn't mind seeing would totally destroy my bracket, but I think some of the SEC teams tonight have a legit shot at an upset. Actually, I think South Carolina actually has a legit shot at upsetting Duke.
Oh, I know. Yeah, they looked really good the other night.
Yeah, and they got basic home court advantage, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, they beat Marquette, I think, the other night.
Yeah, they slaughtered them. Yeah.
But I think I follow Marquette pretty tight, and Duke probably plays a little bit better defense than Marquette.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I don't think Wojo has the athletes to do what Duke's athletes do. So,
We'll see.
how you feeling after your road trip?
Oh man, I've been on the road 2 weeks, essentially driving back to Wisconsin. I just got back from Houston, and it's I gotta tell you, it does a number on your hips and legs and overall body tightness and desire to work out. So I'm okay. I went for a little run yesterday, but I gotta say I'm about 2 weeks away from 70.3 Chattanooga.
2 weeks.
I mean 2 months.
I was going to say, I was
Yeah.
like, man, they were missing something.
2 weeks. I need a 2 week plan. No, we're gonna yeah, and I'm a little behind the eight ball, man. I gotta say, I've let it slack a little bit. I haven't really worked out a whole lot in the last 2 weeks. So as my coach, I'm coming to you, man, for a crash course.
Well, this is, essentially is a really good topic. Not so much the crash course aspect of it, but the having to adapt, a few months into your season based on your previous expectations of how you wanted the season to look. And then that could be, for your example, athletes that work and travel a lot, or maybe they change jobs or have a very demanding job that has gotten, more has created just more time constraint, whether it's been family or issues, whether it's been illness or injury. I mean, this is a time of year where people you really can't go through a whole year without having a setback. And I think that's essentially what this podcast is going to be about is how to adapt, adjust, and kind of keep a good positive mindset on the ability to focus on the long-term aspect of the season and how to kind of gather yourself back into, okay, just because I've lost a week or two doesn't necessarily mean my season is lost or I need a crash course. I'm scrolling through my athlete roster right now, and I've got, an athlete who just spent 10 days in Key West, an athlete who has just been kind of on and off, like woke up earlier this week and just like slept 9 hours, but just had nothing in the tank. I've got, an athlete that took 2 weeks off because she threw something out in her back, helping people move. And I've got another person with, that's got like a real bad flare up on his IT band, and another athlete who's just like almost came down with pneumonia on spring break. So like it's very, very common for athletes, especially in triathlon, that we make it such a long season that something is going to happen, and you're going to have layoffs. And so what we'll talk about today is essentially just how to kind of regroup. And the first thing I would say is, being tired is the first reason, or one of the first indicators you're going to actually lack in motivation. And I mean, that's probably what you're feeling right now from being 2 weeks on the road is that that lack of motivation is really just directly tied to just overall exhaustion. And athletes who plan their whole year, so basically we'll start from scratch. So we'll use you as athlete example for somebody like you, what I tend to do with that is first spend your first 3 or 4 days this week and just get moving. And as for your case, especially spending so much time in the car, I would spend like 20 to 30 minutes a day outside of doing some other exercise of just doing foam rolling and stretching of your hamstrings and hips.
Okay.
Because it's super important for both cycling and running, but especially running. We talked in our last podcast about foam rolling and stretching, how important it was, but I jumped back up in mileage this week, and I went out was going to try to do my long run on Friday, and I had nothing. I mean, I just literally couldn't get my legs to move. Like my lower back, I've been sleeping on the couch, or taking Hayden back and forth. So like sometimes I'll be on the couch for 4 hours with my 22-pound 8-month-old literally sleeping on top of me.
Yeah.
And so that's not really ideal sleeping scenario, but especially from like your lower back. And like we talked about in the previous podcast, that everything happens from the north to the south. So like my lower back and my hips were super tight, which was tugging on my hamstrings and my quads, and it just collapses like an accordion. And so I ended up just kind of cutting my run short. And then literally yesterday, I spent probably an hour and a half, 2 45-minute sessions, literally just foam rolling and stretching my lower back, hips, and hamstrings. And I didn't want to, but I was like, man, if I even want to have, like, I would just, I was tight and just so wound up tight that I always hear this phrase, like, you want your glutes firing when you run. Like, you want a really high stride, you really want to be able to push from there. And if your hamstrings, your hips, and your lower back are tight, you got nothing. And I went out for my run this morning and demolished it.
Really?
I mean, I felt like a gazelle. My stride was like more loose, and everything was just working more freely, and I was able to crank out like just under 21 miles this morning, feeling really, really good. But going back to, it's because it was all from the hips. So for you, that's what I would start off with. But what I generally do for athletes in your situation is we do kind of a ramp up test, and then we scale back. So for example, what I would do for you is say, I want you to take 4 days of just kind of get moving. Do something every day. Swim, bike, run, and do, something of choice on Thursday. And then what we're going to do Friday, Saturday, Sunday is we're going to do kind of a mini block. And what that mini block is going to do is kind of see where you're at. And this isn't going to be an all-out block. It's going to be swim on Friday, bike on Saturday, run on Sunday. And it's going to be, I want you to go out every time, and I want you to stop at about 80%. So like if you're swimming and you get to like 2,000, you're like, I could probably go 500 more for sure. Then I would just say stop. If you're riding and you hit the, hour and a half mark and you're like, man, I could probably easily go, 2 hours, I would say stop right there. Or, if it's 2 hours and you think you can go 2.5, stop at 2. Running, hey, I'm heading out for, a certain amount. I hit 10 miles and I'm like, man, I could easily get 3 or 4 more. I'd say stop there. So because you don't want to come out of the gate and put yourself immediately back in the hole, which is what a lot of athletes do. And this is the scenario where most athletes are the most thankful that they have a coach, because the self-coached athlete, when things don't go right, they kind of start to scramble. They're like, wait a minute, like I don't know what to do. It's hard to be objective. Do I switch a workout? If I missed a workout, do I adjust it? Do I move Tuesday to Sunday? So this is where having a coach really comes in handy. But the basis of this little mini block is just to kind of get a baseline. We want to get a baseline of where your fitness is currently, so we're not guessing, because 2 weeks off is a long time, but it's not a season ender, and it's not like we're starting over from scratch, and so with your race 2 months away, we don't want to waste time either. So I don't want to jump back in your training and be like, all right, we need to start back like we did in January. But what this does is gives us a good baseline. It also gets you in a routine. And so what I would do is I would take your your sample set from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, your swim, bike, run, and I would use those as how I would set up your next 3 weeks. So let's say you did, a 2,500 yard swim, a 2-hour bike, and a 10-mile run. Well, I would scale that back for week 1, to something like a 2,000 yard swim, a hour and 45-minute bike, and then maybe like a 7 or 8 mile run. You might think, all right, well, I already can do that, so why are you stepping me backwards? Well, you're already going to be fatigued, coming off that weekend. And what we don't want to do is start to ramp you up real quick. So what I would do is start you off easy, get you back in the flow of things. And then that second week, that's the week we would jump back into where we know you can handle it, and then actually just bump up one weekend on the third week. So that third week might look like a long swim of 3,000, a long ride of 2:15 to 2 hours, and a long run of whatever 11 or 12, and then we go back to recover. But the thing that athletes should understand in this kind of period of I'm coming off of illness, I'm coming off any kind of obstacle, is a real chance for you not to adjust your goals, but to kind of come to an understanding of your expectations.
Gotcha.
And, everybody has different expectations. And usually, expectations and goals for the triathlon season are really easy to make in January, especially the first week, because shit hadn't gone wrong yet. You still got 360 days left for life to get in the way, illness, injury, job, setback, whatever it could be. And, this happened for me, last year. I was kind of in almost the exact same scenario you're in. When Hayden was born, I was about 2 months out almost exactly from Wisconsin. Uh-huh. And I ended up taking, he was in the NICU for 4 days, and then he was home. And so there was little to no working out / little to no sleep. And once we kind of got back in the routine, it was like, all right, do I need to adjust my expectations? Not really, not expectations and goals, but what I can keep is my attitude about how I'm going to go about the next 2 months.
Yeah.
A lot of people will just cave it in. I just haven't had it go my way. I'll just make this a B race and I'll just target this, because that's super easy. I've done that before in the past. I'm like, things haven't gone well. Let me just, I'll just say that I'm training through this one because things didn't go well, and I'll look for another race in July or August. But what you need to focus is basically just start over. And say, for these next 8 to 9 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it is, I'm going to execute my training to the best of my ability.
Right.
And if you can do that, who's to say that you're not going to actually perform better? Because a lot of people, if you're just super motivated and you're feeling awesome and you're ready to train, who says that little rest time wasn't exactly what you needed to, instead of just piddle through the next 8 or 9 weeks, who says it's not what you needed to actually just be incredibly focused on these next 8 to 10 weeks, and you might actually race better, which I think is exactly what happened to me for Wisconsin. Is I knew my time was running out, so I knew that skipped workouts were no longer an option. I had to get it in. Now, had I not had that, I probably could have skipped a little bit and here and there, so it can actually turn into a positive.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's your philosophy on this, and I thought it would be. I think that's kind of been a little bit of my philosophy all along. I do have a tendency to start late, so when I said a crash course, I didn't mean that in the sense that I was panicked by any means, because I thought before we talked today, because of how I do feel from being in the car that long and being on my feet for a whole week doing video shoots and just standing in one place and getting tight and all that, my agenda really was going to start. Almost what you're saying is start working on the mountain bike ride, 30 minutes. Like yesterday, I just went out for a 5-mile run, real easy, just to kind of, I was going to start today, but I was feeling it yesterday, so I just went out for an easy jog, and it didn't feel good, but the whole plan is just to get my body back into that memory cycle. I don't feel like I'm in terrible shape by any means, but there's no sense in, the tendency would be to like, damn, I got to go out and prove that I can still do 10 miles right now.
Exactly. Which is what most people do.
Yeah, so I had sort of concocted a plan in my head for this week, and we hadn't talked yet, but it was going to be sort of this get up early, go for a short mountain bike ride to warm up, come back, because I got a lot of work on my table too. I got tons of video editing, so I'll be sitting in a chair, and I was going to do a morning ride, an easy thing just to get up and blood going, and then take another break midday and, go out for a short run or go for a swim, but nothing crazy, just getting those motions back and kind of waking up my body slowly. It's sort of like a real slow warm up to get back into it. And I think you're right. It might be a nice break from when I was in decent shape 2 weeks ago. So now all of a sudden and I haven't been totally neglecting everything. I've been, like I said, doing push-ups and trying to do that sort of thing. But I like the idea of taking time. It's like, in March Madness where they pull out the best player for 2-3 minute stretches and everybody gets mad, but then they come back in fresh. It's like you got to be patient too.
Yeah, we can all. Everybody can, myself included. We're very much when it comes to any kind of not a negative, but any kind of an obstacle, we become such a prisoner of the moment. That we just immediately start to doubt ourselves, doubt our goals, doubt that we can do it, doubt that we've set the bar too high. And I even did it after my run Friday. I was like, man, how the hell am I gonna do Leadville? And I basically absolutely suffered through this 12-mile easy run. And I was just shot. My confidence was shaken. My legs felt like rocks. And here I am, my first week back from a recovery block, and I feel just terrible. And I just doubted myself. And I was like, all right, well, I can just take it easy again Sunday and try to start over again, or I can go back after it Sunday, and on Saturday I can try to fix the things that I knew that I did wrong. I didn't stretch enough. I probably didn't eat enough. I had too much coffee. There was a list of things I'm thinking, all right, now I can probably try and correct these, and let's see if they make a difference. 48 hours later, totally different person. Totally different runner, totally different mentality, and my confidence is back. But we always happen to just suck ourselves into like you said, being this prisoner of a moment. And there's a huge sports is one of those things, and this goes with teams and individual sports as well, is you have to get fit at the right time. In March Madness, you have to get hot at the right time, because that's really it. It's very rarely the team who is the most talented and athletic. It's the team who's hot at the right time and playing the best overall. And because the season's incredibly long, and the same can be said for your triathlon season or your running season or whatever it is. You just have to be hot at the right time when it matters. And nobody wants to get hot. And if you're an endurance athlete, nobody wants to get hard in March. You want to get hot in October when Kona happens, or you want to get hot and you want to feel rested and ready, right before your big event. That's the conversation I've had to have with a lot of my athletes. It's like, man, if you're going to suffer any kind of a setback or a stall in training, thank God you're having it in March.
Yeah.
Because in the glass half full aspect of that is, maybe this is what we need. Maybe this is what we need to kind of take a step back and say, all right, for the athletes I have, they're doing Wisconsin, that's in September, or Mount Tremblant in August, or, even something after that. It's like, man, that's such a long way away. It's like, keep it in perspective of where you are in your journey throughout the year, and be like, all right, the season ain't over yet. It ain't even started, and so why not just come back smarter and hungrier and be more motivated not to work out harder, but just to be more diligent and not missing workouts. And if you, and because that's what training and fitness is. It's not these epic weekends that you put together or these like mind blowing workouts. It's how many days, weeks, months you can accumulate, accumulate together without missing. That's how you gain fitness.
Yeah.
And that's how you need to think about it when you have any kind of a setback.
That is such a huge point, I think. Going into this 2 weeks of driving that I just had, I know that I mentally had in mind that I was just going to go and, if I could just get up every morning and walk for 2 miles or jog for 3 miles or something real simple and easy, that would have been way better than what happened for me, because it's sort of this, like, if you get this 16 or 20 week training plan in your head and you're trying to follow that for that long a time, it just becomes so gnarly and annoying and difficult to, especially for type A people, I suppose, that can't stomach the idea of missing a 2,500 meter swim, whereas if you could just get to the pool and do 1,000 instead of sweating the 2,500 and not doing it, how much better off would you be if you just got up every day and ran 3 miles instead of doing nothing for 2 weeks?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, we just, athletes in general, the most probably one of the more popular reasons athletes get a coach is because they just absolutely hate the chaos of something going off schedule. It gives them anxiety. They don't know if they should move it, if they should move it. Should I skip it altogether? I'm going to be out of town next week. I want to have my bike. My chain's broken. I need new running shoes, or it's raining outside. There's like all these factors, and you're like, okay, just take the day off. If you can't do anything, I read a great quote earlier this week that was like, and this goes the same for me. So far in my training this year is the best training days I've probably had since I started training for Leadville were the 3 days that I took off that weren't scheduled, or the one day where I was supposed to do speed work and I chose to take it easy and push Hayden in the stroller. It's having that long-term vision instead of being that prisoner of the moment in the other way of saying, I've got to do it right now. I can't miss it. I've got to have it. There's those extremes that we can't live on either side of them, and it's the same that goes with your attitude. I always tell people, don't get too up, don't get too down, because you can live on both ends, and it's never really as great as it seems, and it's never as really bad as it seems. And the same goes for training. And it's keeping that objectivity and that long-term vision of, all right, things didn't go well. How can I it's instead of thinking, woe is me, my season's ruined, I better just, basically call it in. It's like, all right, what can I do to turn this into a positive? Okay, I'm well rested because I've had time off. I've got a better perspective. I'm now more motivated and hungry. I know what it's like to listen to my body, so the next time something like this happens, I'll know how to adjust. There's a lot of positives you can take of it instead of just letting it ruin your season. And again, like I said, that's one of the big, because as a coach, you're more like and honestly, like a lot of areas, you're like a life advocate. You're like, it's not just about athletics. It's about, helping shape people in a positive way and not letting what they're doing destroy their current athletic goal or other aspects of their life negatively. And when you go through slumps like these, it can just be deteriorating, or like you said, it can be positive when you kind of come back from it with a sort of mindfulness that says, all right, I've got 2 months. What can we do with this? Instead of, oh crap, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Right. What's going to get you out the door? I woke up this morning and I have a ton of prep work for a big editing week, and then I kind of wanted to watch some basketball, and now we're talking about we're on a podcast, and I still got to get out, work out. So the last thing I want to do is think about some ridiculous thing. So I'm just gonna, maybe try and get out there and do something simple and just get it moving. And it can be overwhelming. I think that trying to fit in triathlon training shouldn't be. Certain people train to win the race, other people train to do their best thing. And my adage has always been, my goal is always to feel the best that I've felt all training schedule on race day. That's just my goal, So whatever that takes, that doesn't mean that I feel necessarily that I've put in 1 billion miles. I just want to feel like I'm in the best shape at that point,
Yeah, I mean, and you can look at it from a way of, okay, well, at least I know I'm more than likely not going to be, somewhat overtrained, because it's like, all right, what, it's so if you look at it from like, again, a positive spin, it's all right. If let's say 10 is your maxed out potential, and let's say everything went perfect for me, and all my training and everything just went perfect, and I went in the race with a 10 fitness, but I might be slightly overtrained and a little bit fatigued because I did so much. Or I come into it with a little bit fresher legs, but probably only at an 8. It's like if I had to put my money on somebody, I'd put it on the 8.
Yeah. What's your adage, man? You always say it.
Yeah, I'll say it's a 100% undertrained is always better than 1% overtrained. I mean, I will, my best races really ever have been on a short focused or coming off an injury, or just when I've been flat out fresh. I did a race. I mean, Ironman Arizona is one that I didn't. I did. It's like a mid-November race, and I took off like the whole month of July and through like mid-August, and did like no training. This is back in like 2011. And I was like, all right, well, I really still want to do this race. So what can I do now? And so, was it a perfect lead up? No. I mean, I think I only did like a 4-hour bike ride. I swam a lot. And then my longest run was like 15 miles on the treadmill. I ended up racing like probably the best executed race of my life with like a 10, I think a 10:31 or 10:32. This is 2011. But I wouldn't say I was undertrained. I would just say I was properly trained and fresh. And so I think that's another way people could look at, any kind of a setback.
Yeah. And again, this sort of philosophy of people that are training to be in the top end of that race or whatever, they're trained up to a deal where they could do it the same way. It's just that they're used to going a lot further, so they could go shorter, and that might be your long run. You know what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's the difference, and I haven't committed to that level. That's my problem. So I'm always that little bit undertrained, work hard, peak, try and peak right at the right time, at least peak for where I'm at, and that's the thing you have to accept, because on race day you're going to have to be mentally, the mental part of it is so big for me, and if you're exhausted, it's hard to dig deeper, but if you're tired, you can go deeper, and that's, you're going to have to make that mental decisions at some time during the race every time, that you're going to have to figure out how to get your mind to go, all right, you can suck it up, but if you're just flat out beat, that's when you're done.
I mean, and a lot of it's also being mentally fresh.
That's what I mean. It's the pain.
Yeah.
You can't beat pain if you're not mentally fresh.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time. When I first started to train you, was and this wasn't hard for you to grasp, is that any kind of race, no matter what it is, that's a longer, harder distance. You only have to do it once.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing.
It's wrapping your mind, but it's wrapping your mind around that, and not being the, what I call the prover. And because they're what I call prover triathletes, or triathletes who always have to do the distance before it's actually time to race. and they never race well. They absolutely never race to their potential because they're so fatigued, and especially with, in my opinion, any race that happens after July, especially for a full Ironman, you really get to that balance area of, am I going to be just more physically and mentally and emotionally tired and exhausted and ready to be over with before the race even gets there? Instead of just being, like you said, it's just peaking your physical abilities with basically your attention span to be able to hold focus for a race that's that long. And if you've done these long training sessions, are absolutely necessary, physically, but also mentally, to kind of help yourself get through it. But there's also a mental freshness you need to have in order to get through them. That's like, it's like I've already drudged my way through these 7-hour bike rides and the 2-hour brick runs, that my mind is just like, God, I got to do another one. And instead of thinking, I just got to do this one time. Oh, I can do this for sure. And having that kind of mental attitude to combine it with your fitness and your freshness is by far the best recipe.
Yeah. And I just like to say, I mean, because if anybody out there has done an Ironman, and how you feel afterwards. I mean, you may feel fine, the next day, or that's in your mind or whatever, but you are deeply fatigued after a race like that. And I've gone through that where, I thought, well, yeah, I feel good. And you feel all right or whatever. You can feel good if you're trained up to it. I'm not saying that, but it takes a lot out of you. And to do that, to replicate that in training, to the letter, or those kind of things, really does, I think, snowball. And it's just this. It can really throw you in a big fatigue. So I agree with what you're saying on this. It's absolutely necessary to get huge mileage and build it up. And I always have loved your style about building it up cumulatively over a few days and things like that, and not doing those 2-hour brick runs after a long bike. It's just like, what?
God, I know. Like, if you're out there and you do that, stop it right now, because you're absolutely killing yourself. I think I've told this story before, but I've got an athlete that lives in Knoxville, and whenever she would train for Ironman Chattanooga, she's like, all right, I'm just going to do your training session, and I do like a ride the course, whatever, 5.5 hours, whatever it is, right there close to race time, and then like maybe just like a 20-minute brick run afterwards, just to kind of get the legs moving and get that feeling, and she's like, oh, my friends are doing 10 miles off the bike. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, what do you mean 10? I mean, what do you mean 10 miles? They might as well just, go ahead and run the next 16 and swim last and say they did their Ironman and call it a day, because you shell the rest of your training, because there's no way you can even come back for that and have, good weeks after that, because you're so fatigued. And that's what we talk about all the time. It's like, am I willing, and this goes back to the, blog post from last week and a bunch of other, times we talk on the podcast. It's like, don't sacrifice this one workout that's either driven by your ego, or more important, and most oftentimes for Ironman, it's built on fear.
Sure.
It's like I've got to cover the distance. Mm-hmm. Oh, I've got to do the distance. And that's that's why, also in my personal training this year for Leadville, it's like, I've never been a fan of the whole run the distance thing or bike the distance. I've always been a cumulative time guy. It's like, I know sure as hell I'm not going to run 100 miles, before I go do Leadville, or I'm not even going to run 50 miles before I do, Leadville. It's like, it's all about cumulative. It's all about putting together a real piece of work than it is just kind of, doing something that you think is going to be good for today. It's like, being able to see the forest and the tree all at the same time, and knowing that, they're both vitally important, and don't ruin it. Don't set one tree ablaze and have it burn down the whole forest. Yeah. Which is your fitness. And so that's a part that I like about this training too, is it's all about, It's all about the process, and it's all about the months and months of training that you can accumulate and put in your fitness bank, and then just go spend it all in one day. Like don't be a weekend spender. Don't put a little bit, don't put chump change in Monday through Friday and then go waste it all on Saturday and Sunday and have to start back over again. Be the guy or the girl who saves it up for 3 or 4 months for that one big day, and then just cash the biggest check you can and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
I think I'm kind of proud of myself for that
I
one.
like that analogy, man. That's
Thanks,
really,
me too.
It's really strong. So, and back to this fatigue that, I don't know. I've heard that, doing an Ironman that, I've heard people are fatigued for months after Ironman. I'm like deep body fatigue. And that probably has a lot to do with the training buildup, but that exertion on one day lasts for a long time. So if you're doing a full distance on the bike and then running like a half marathon brick or something after that, I mean, that's like weeks of fatigue potentially,
It's huge. It's so much fatigue. Like, and you said, like, when you come back from an Ironman, you don't even know how fatigued you are.
That's the thing.
And like I remember the Arizona race I referenced earlier, I waited 3 weeks before I even tried to do anything, and I was mentally back. I was like, man, I'm ready to go, coming off of my best race. Let's go back to the pool. And I pulled in the YMCA parking lot. I parked my car, and I walked up the stairs, and I turned right back around before I even opened the door, because my legs were still like, I was like, dude, it sounds like a good idea, but my body was like, dude, just turn around. You're not even close to ready. And so I just turned back around and waited a week. It's kind of like the old adage that people say, and that, for training, if you're sick or you're injured, always wait one more day, at least one more day past the day you think you're ready to come back. So if you wake up today and you're like, I feel totally better from this sickness, I'm going to go today. Wait one more day and start tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the same can be said for that. But yeah, it's doing those long, especially the long runs after the bike. It was what people don't realize, and it's why I hate these long runs off the bike, is because your run form is going to be trash. And so because you're already so fatigued, so you're more susceptible to injury. You're not going to be running well, so you're going to be more sore the next day. So and you're counting that as like quality run mileage for the week, when actually it's just like garbage miles and garbage time. Like, make it 20 minutes just to know what that feels like, if you need that. But I don't even do them anymore. I mean, I'm not this year, obviously, but even last year, I think I did one. And that was just to practice fast legs, and that was it. Because once you know that it's just going to be painful and suck, you don't need to do it again. Because, unless you just want to kind of get in and do it. But it's just running off the bike, the fatigue you carry lasts infinitely longer than any other kind of running.
And you touched on it earlier, actually, and it was just a little thing you dipped in there. But you said if sometimes you may drink too much coffee or whatever, and that's a bad thing. That's what I think people underestimate the most, personally, when they do those super long bricks and things like that, is they get so dehydrated. And then you become in a perpetual state of dehydration. I'm big on that, and I think that's one of the most underrated parts of these huge training days, is that we just don't get enough liquid in our body, and that's when we get tired and sore and all those sorts of things, and you just can't keep up with it,
Yeah, you really can't. I mean, you can't eat it. You can't eat enough calories to replace what you're burning, and you can't drink enough to replace what you've sweat out. And and so you do that enough, and you chip away at your recovery bank to where you just can't recover, fully. Or if you do, it's just not as much as you need it to. And so, like I said, it's that fine line between saving and spending. And hey, we're in March. You don't need to be spending money anyway in March. You need to be saving.
Yeah, save it up.
Save it up.
All right. Anything else you got on your mind here, man?
No, man, that was that's all I got.
You got me. Oh, you got. I was gonna say you got me convinced.
Good. But I'm also super pumped for our podcast coming out on Thursday. We're gonna have very well-respected, probably world-renowned running coach Steve Magnus on the podcast on Thursday. Coached 2 Olympians, cross-country and track All-Americans, and just all-around running guru. He's got a website, Science of Running, and a awesome book, from what I understand, coming out in June called Peak Performance that he did with Brad Stolberg, who we'll also have on in April or May. But yeah, I'm really, really pumped. So if you love all things running or want to know what it takes to be the best, or you want to hear it from the best, make sure you listen on Thursday's podcast.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to actually ask him about those bricks and things like that. But I think he got me convinced, man, that I might just spend the next week just foam rolling. Maybe I'll just train all the way to the race with foam roller.
Push-ups and foam rolling.
I know,
that's all you need.
A little bit undertrained, but I'll have a lot in the tank for one day.
But you could do some great yoga poses at the finish line.
Oh man, can you imagine that?
That'd
be nice. That'd be how I foam rolled myself to the Chattanooga 70.
I wouldn't put it past you, man. You're the one for a finish line drama.
I'm the one with the guts to try that.
Yep, to cross the finish line twice, Mike Trolley.
Oh man, we'll link to that video maybe.
Yeah, we should.
All right, well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening. I think we're back on schedule. No more travel for me, and I won't be falling asleep during the podcast from now on.
Perfect. We'll see you on Thursday.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.
All right.